Alright guys, welcome back to episode 2 of making an antique gumball machine in Blender. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, I'm not sure why you're watching part 2 of a tutorial series you haven't started, but go back and watch that. In the last tutorial, we made the base of the gumball machine, and I'm actually recording this the same day as the previous video. I'm obviously editing it into different parts for your consumption, but if you're keen-eyed, you would have noticed that there's been quite a big gap since the last video down here. And I've actually recorded this twice now, and I came across a problem in Blender which I have never seen before. Now, I've been using Blender almost 20 years. I started around 2001, I want to say. So it's almost 2020, so maybe 19 years, 18 years, but, you know, close to 20 years. And I'm always finding new things. Now, I may have run into this decades ago, but I don't remember. But I ran into a problem where Blender was running slow, and I've never really noticed this before. So I tried to restart my computer, I closed a bunch of programs, tried to figure out what was going on. And I did. So I'm going to start this video off just with a little tidbit, fun fact about Blender. So when you're 3D modeling, you generally want to avoid n-gons. And what an n-gon is when you have more than 4 vertices to a face. So let's go over here and add a cube. So this face right here has 4 vertices. If we go into vertex mode, we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now, if we were to select everything, hit F3 and say triangulate faces, so now everything is a triangle. Why is it sticking? What's going on with my keyboard? I swear my computer's breaking. Okay, so we have all of these triangle faces where each one has 1, 2, 3 vertices. Generally speaking, you always want to work in triangles, and you always want to work with quads. And use triangles sparingly, only where necessary, but try to keep everything in quads. And the reason why is because just like we use the subdivision surface on here to create these round, smooth edges, subdivision surface works best on quads. It works okay on triangles, but it works absolutely awfully on n-gons. So what's an example of an n-gon? Well, let's add a cylinder, and you can see cap fill type is set to n-gon. We're going to set nothing for now. All right, and here we have our cylinder. And if we select this edge loop and hit F, well, look at that. Now we have one giant face, but if we count, we have, 1, 2, 3, all the way around 32. If you select them all, you'll see down here 32 vertices selected. You have one face that has 32 vertices. This is an n-gon, and these are bad. You want to avoid these because when you do the subdivision surface modifier, it won't really know what to do with that top piece. But what you want to do, let's just get rid of this for now, is delete that face. What you want to do is something like this. So hit extrude and then scale down. You can even hit extrude again and then hit scale 0. And now you have triangles in here. Each one of these, for example, face mode is a triangle, and each one of these is a quad. This is a much better way to fill a cylinder top because it's using triangles and it's using quads. Now, technically, before everything is sent to your graphics card, it's turned into triangles. And sorry for going off topic on this gumball project, but you'll see why it's important very shortly. Technically, everything is set to triangles before it gets to your graphics card, but there's more than one way to do it. So, for example, let's go into circle select, just delete all these for now, delete those faces. So that's one way you can turn this into triangles, right? We can select this and make just a series of pie slices. That's one way. But sometimes what will happen is it'll do this, which is a completely different beast, right? It's a completely different way of still making the same shape, but using different triangles. There we go. Undo. And then another one is you can do grid fill, which is yet another way. And then, of course, triangulate those as well, which is a completely other pattern. So everything is turned into triangles eventually. But as you can see here, we just did 3 completely different ways of making the same shape out of completely different triangles. So the problem with n-gons is that when you just have one big face like this, internally Blender's treating this as triangles, but we can't see it. So it could be using any one of those patterns and we don't know which one it's using. This makes calculation for Blender much more difficult, so when you try to use modifiers, like the subdivision surface modifier, it doesn't know what to do with this face, because this face could have any number of internal representations. But because we can specify exactly how we want the faces to look, we can make sure that we're using quads and triangles where appropriate, instead of just letting it be magic. Now, I made not a mistake, but I didn't really think it was a big problem when I was doing this piece here. But if you recall, on the bottom, we extruded this circle out, we extruded again, and then I just chose these and hit F to make a face. And I thought, no big deal. It's on the bottom. You know, it's not a side that anyone's going to see. Who cares, right? Well, wrong, because Blender cares. So when I was recording the previous video, I noticed I was having some lag. I would hit R to put an edge loop in, click, and then it freezes for a second. I don't know if you can see that in the recording, but let's dissolve these edges. You can see how everything is really slow, too. Like, if I go to faces and I take, like, this face and hit extrude, it takes like a second. It kind of lags before it figures out how to extrude. And I've never seen that with Blender before. Generally speaking, you know, I'm a huge fan of Blender. I haven't really noticed weird slowdowns like that. So, like, you know, this is fine, right? It lets me pick the edge loop, but as soon as I click, there's a second pause before I get that edge loop. And so, you know, I added like a cube, and I was like, wait, so with this, I can put an edge loop and move immediately. What is going on here? Why is it, whoops, I hit Z, solid. Why is it on this object in particular, when I put an edge loop, it freezes for a whole second before I can move it? And the answer was this n-gon. So if we go into face mode, delete this n-gon, delete faces. Now watch what happens. I can put an edge loop and move it immediately, just like I've always been able to. And, you know, I thought my computer was out of memory. I still had several gigabytes free, but I restarted just in case. And it was just because of that n-gon. So I hope that's a lesson to everybody. That wasn't what I planned on teaching today. We're already 8 minutes into this video, and we haven't even started what we're supposed to talk about. But I think that's an important lesson to show to everyone. N-gons will slow things down. N-gons add extra computation to Blender that it doesn't need to deal with. It's just a waste of everybody's time. It's bad for models. You should avoid them. It's bad if you plan on doing animation. It's just avoid n-gons at all costs. You should tend to be working in quads or triangles. And currently everything on this model is a quad. Believe it or not. I mean, you know, this is a long rectangle, but it's still a quad. You know, these are all quads. That's a quad. Nowhere on this model currently is, and you know, if we turn off the subdivision surface, we can see it a little bit easier. Nowhere on this model is a triangle. You can get some trapezoid shaped quads, but we're not using triangles anywhere, and that's actually ideal because that works the best with the subdivision surface modifier, as well as other modifiers, and like I said, things like animating. Now, we're not going to be animating this, at least not in a traditional sense, so we don't care about that aspect, but it's just a good habit to get into to always work in quads and only use triangles when necessary. Sorry for that rant. Let's actually get started. So what we want to do is model this door, and also model the lip thing that comes out, the little drawer to catch the gumballs. Now, in this tutorial, I'm not going to model this little glass piece. You can if you want to, as extra credit or homework. But I feel like I would like it to have the look where when we have the render, you can just see directly into this. I kind of like this style where you can see into the cavity, and maybe there'll even be some gumballs resting there. Whereas this, you know, you can tell what it's supposed to be, but I feel like if this was a gumball machine that you'd find out in the wild, this part would be broken or long gone. And it also just, you know, I feel like if you're seeing this render for the first time, it would make more sense to see some gumballs on the tray and be able to directly see them instead of like have this weird glass piece in the way. So the first thing we want to do is kind of cut out this hole. Actually, no, we want to extrude this little drawer bit. And what we can see here is this ridge line that comes down the sides stops, and there's a little bit of a gap of regular surface before the cutout starts. So what I want to do... Oh, you know what? It looks like I must have saved this in the previous video. I already have these edge loops in there. Like I said, I recorded this video once already, and I had to restart because of that one problem. So let's just, if you were following from your previous video, you won't have those lines. So I'm going to hit 1 for front. And what we want to do is put a line right about there and a line right about there. The problem is, when we do it by hand like that, they won't necessarily be in the same place. Now, we could use a mirror modifier, but I think I'll save that for later. And there's 2 ways we can go about dealing with this. If you look down here, when I put this line in, or sorry, up here, you can see how far I'm moving it from center. So if I move it all the way left, it's 1. If I move it all the way to the right, you can see up here, it goes -1. So if I move it to here, and I think that's about good, we can see it's 4530. So then I can do the same thing here and type 0.4530. Got to go the other way. Sorry. Negative 0.4530. And that will get us a cut the exact same distance. Another way that we could have done it would have been to take the edge loop tool, use the mouse wheel to scroll up and put 2 cuts, do the same thing here, and then we can just take this inner loop and hit dissolve edges, and then now we have, you know, similarly distant edge loops cuts from both sides. You could do either of those methods. We did this one last, so we'll keep rolling with that. And then we want to kind of figure out where the top of the door will be. And so again, just eyeballing it, I feel like probably if we look here, maybe 3 units down would probably be pretty good. So somewhere like right there would be a good place to put that cut in. But one thing is, well, we'll cross that bridge later. I'm just talking to myself. Ignore me now. All right, so now what we want to do is extrude out this area so that we can make a drawer for the gumballs. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my circle select mode. Actually, I'm going to go into face select mode. Alt-A to deselect everything. C for circle select, and get just these faces here. I like to use circle select. It's a quick way of selecting things rather than holding shift and individually selecting. I'm going to go to top view, and I'm not selecting these lip ones. It's a lot more work to do the modeling for that, so we're just going to ignore that for this tutorial. And it will still come out fine, so don't worry about that. I'm going to go to the top view. I'm going to hit extrude and pull it down just a little bit to maybe right about there. And side view. Actually, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to extrude. Whoops. I'm going to extrude, but right-click to cancel. And then I'm going to hit grab Y and bring it to about there. And the reason why is when you do it that way, this bottom part stays flat. When you extrude, it'll extrude out at an angle. So this way, it'll stay nice and flat. But one thing that we notice is that these bottom parts are kind of sticking out further than the top parts. So I'm going to use a trick to make sure all of these are aligned. I'm going to go into vertex mode, select this top vertice. I'm going to hit Shift S and choose Cursor to Selected. That'll put your 3D cursor exactly where that vertice is. Then I'm going to hold Alt and select this edge loop. I'm going to hit period on the keyboard, not on the numpad, on the keyboard, and choose 3D cursor. By default, it's medium point, but we're going to choose 3D cursor. And what that will do is it will allow us to scale things around the 3D cursor. So if I were to hit S right now, you can see it'll scale towards the 3D cursor or away from it. If we were in median point, remember period on the keyboard, you'll see they scale based on their center. But if we go to 3D cursor, they now scale around the cursor. So we're going to use this as a useful trick. Remember, if you hit Scale Shift Z, things will only scale on the Z axis. So now if we hit 0, these are now perfectly aligned vertically. If we go to the top, you can see these ones are not perfectly aligned, whereas these ones are. So let's do that from the top view. I'm going to select this one, cursor to selected, select. Now when I select this edge loop, it goes too far. So in this case, we're just going to use circle select and get just those ones. But if we go to the top view, scale, Shift Z, 0, you can see now they're all perfectly lined. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that for all of these. Whoops. Forgot to hit Shift there. All right, and so now those are all vertically aligned. So what we can do now is try to shape that curved area that we want for the drawer. So I'm going to turn on X-ray mode, and the reason why is if I were to go to circle select and do that, it'll get that vertice, but not the ones underneath it. Right? If I hit circle select and try to get this one, it'll get the top vertice, but not the ones underneath it. But if we hit Alt Z for X-ray mode, which I think you can also click this button here to go to X-ray mode. Now, if you hit C, you'll get the full line of vertices. So what I want to do is basically try to make, I'm going to select both sides to make it more symmetrical. Let's grab these ones up. And that actually already looks pretty good. I only had to do one thing, but now, okay, I think it's a little bit too, yeah, okay, so let's just use box select and get all of these, scale on X. Now, we're still scaling around the cursor. So now we want to go into period and choose medium point again, scale on X, and just bring those in a little bit. So now our curve is a little bit smoother. Even these ones, I feel like it could probably come in a bit, so let's go to the top. Select all of these, maybe not these ones in the center. If you use box select with the middle mouse, it'll deselect. Scale X and just bring that in. There we go. I like the way that's looking. Beautiful. All right, so now we want to cut out the hole for the gumballs. And I'm trying to think the best way to do this. So I think what we'll do is we'll start by deleting these because we know we don't want them. Delete those vertices. Now we have a hole to work with. But I want this face to kind of loop around the top here, and that's not what's happening. If we go into face mode and select this face loop, you can see it goes down around to here. But what I actually want it to do is go down and then loop around here and then go up on this side. And so to create that pattern, I'm going to delete some faces here. I'm actually just going to delete all 4 of these faces. So hit X, delete faces, not vertices. If you hit vertices, it deletes way too much. If you hit faces, it just deletes, well, the faces. Then we'll take edges, edge mode, and take these 3 edges, top view, extrude, right click to let go, grab with Y and bring them in just a bit. And now, we need one more actually. We want these 2 as well. Extrude, right click, grab Y, bring those in, scale on X just a bit, bring them back maybe just a little bit, scale on Y, and I'm just kind of doing this by eye. There we go, beautiful. So now if we select this edge and hit F, we create a face, Let's select these 2 vertices, hit G twice, and just drag them back along that edge just a bit. And now what we have is the correct shape. So if we go into face mode, you can see now it goes all the way around the lip of that. And that's the correct geometry that we want for this little drawer thing. I think it's probably a little bit too wide right now. So what we're going to do is just select this edge loop, and with circle select we'll deselect these ones. And from the top view, I'm just going to scale it out a bit so it's a little bit less wide. All right, and then we can take these two. Well, actually, I'll just kind of eyeball this. It's not a huge deal. And move those until they're straight. Okay, perfect. So now we'll take this, and we are going to put a mirror modifier on this later, so everything will be exactly perfect. But for now, we'll take this. We will use circle select to deselect just these ones. And I'm going to extrude down with Z about that far, extrude again with Z about that far, and extrude again Z that far. And I forgot to deselect this one, so we'll go ahead and delete these vertices. So now we have that inner lip. And now we need to go back. So we'll choose these. And I don't really care about the top, so we'll not use those. I'm going to top view. I'm going to turn on, what's it called? X-ray. I'm going to extrude, right click to let go of these, grab on Y to bring those back. And now I'm going to go to top view, deselect everything. I'm going to get my box select with B, select the entire back half, hit H to hide. So now we can kind of see inside. And you know what? I'm probably actually even going to get rid of more. Let's go into circle select and just kind of get rid of this entire section on both sides. So just hide. And now we can see what we're doing on the inside. So I'm going to use that same trick to make these aligned vertically. So Shift S, cursor to selected, select that entire edge loop, period, to go scale around cursor. And then scale Shift Z 0. They're now vertically aligned. Same thing on this side. And we will go back to medium point so we don't forget later. I'm going to go into edge mode with 2, fill that into a face, and then hit F to fill those out. Now it's curving, which, let's see. I feel like it should be square in the back, so I'm just going to put an edge loop here, an edge loop here, and then select both and just bring those back to about there. So now it's a little bit square. It's still rounded, which I like, but it's not perfectly square. So now we just have to complete the faces on the bottom, which I think, let's go into face mode and hide these ones for now so we can see what we're doing underneath. So if I take this edge, that should work. I can just keep hitting F a couple times. All right, and then we will put in 2 edge loops here because what I want to do is connect this one. I'm going to turn off subdivision surface so we can see easier. I'm going to connect this one to this one, make it a face, and then make those 2 faces. And we'll take this edge and just scale it. Doesn't have to be perfect, and that's fine. I'm going to put one more edge loop right here. And maybe from the front, I'll go into X-ray, vertex mode, deselect everything, and just bring this out, just so it's a little bit more curved. I don't know why it didn't like that. What's going on down here? What did I do? Do I have some weird normals going on? Let's see. What is going on here? What is going on? Recalculate. There we go. Not sure what's going on here. What does it look like with this? Oh, it looks fine. I guess it's just with the subsurf on, the normals work out better. Okay, so now let's go to the top. X-ray, vertices, deselect, grab these, move them down, and perfect. Now we're already at 25 minutes, so it looks like this video is going to be just creating this little drawer, and then in the next video we will tackle the faceplate. But there's still a couple more things to do here. So one thing you notice from the side view is that this actually curves up gently. So we can go ahead and do that. Shouldn't be too hard. So what I'm going to do is basically just go to side view, go into X-ray view, and we basically want to choose box select these ones. And then from side view, we will just very carefully bring those up just a little bit. Deselect those, bring these up a bit. Deselect those and bring these up a bit. And now we have that gentle curve. And maybe even we'll take these inside ones, with the exception of that one and that one, maybe bring those down just a little bit. Now, if you want to, you could tighten this by putting an extra edge loop in there, so it's a little bit harder of an edge. We could also do the same thing on the outside as well. And then, lastly, we want to make this edge loop a little bit tighter. So I want them all to be at the same height, at least near where the door is. So I'm going to select this vertice, put my cursor there, go into cursor scaling mode, choose these ones, scale Z 0, not shift Z this time, just scale Z, and that brought them all down to the same height. I'm going to insert an edge loop here and just kind of tighten that up on both sides. Actually, I don't need that one. Okay, there we go. And that looks good. I think that's enough for today. So there is some artifacting happening around here, but actually I'm going to not worry about that because in the next episode, we're going to delete that anyways because it's going to be replaced by this. So I think everything for now looks really good. We have our little drawer. It seamlessly comes down, wraps around, and goes back up. The topology, if we turn off one of these layers, looks pretty good in wireframe. Even if we just don't use this at all, it looks pretty good. Of course, it looks better subsurfed. Why is this? There we go. And yeah, so that does it for this episode, another 30-minute episode. But yeah, so like I said, I spent, 20, 30 minutes just trying to figure out why doing something simple like putting an edge loop was freezing it. And it was because I had that n-gon on the bottom. We'll make a bottom for this separately later in a future video. So I'm not worried about it having a hole here. And chances are in your render, you're not going to be seeing the bottom anyways. But otherwise, I think we're on a good track. Actually, there's one more thing I'm going to do that's just been kind of bothering me. I'm going to go into, I'm going to select everything and hit Alt-M, merge by distance. Okay, so everything's merged. That's good. I want this lip on the bottom to be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to go into X-ray mode. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit, grab Z. I'm going to put an edge loop in here just to kind of thicken this base piece out because it was looking a little bit too thin. And I think that looks a lot better now. All right, so our base is done. The next step is to get the faceplate and coin mechanism in there. And I hope you'll join me in part 3 to do that. Remember to like, comment with any questions. I love answering questions, so feel free to comment. And, of course, subscribe so that you could see the next episode.